To the November the 18th Administration and Operations Committee meeting. I'll start with my apologies for my tardiness. I won't blame it on the traffic, but I'll blame it on the traffic. But anyway, thank you. Attendance, it appears that everybody is here. As far as the agenda, anybody with anything to add to the agenda? Councillor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just one item under other business.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, Councillor Chambers.
Not a request to add anything to the agenda, but I'm just wondering if staff could slow the fans down a bit. It's blowing my paper all over the place here, and it's a little bit too much.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, seeing no other additions to the agenda, can Mayor Bailey approve as amended?
Yeah.
Councillor Oakley, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you for that. Declaration of pecuniary interest, any right now? If any arise, just let me know. Delegations, petitions, presentations, there are none at this time. Adoption of the previous minutes, if I could get a mover for that, please. Councillor Howes, Councillor Oakley. Questions? Councillor Bell.
It's more of a follow-up, so I can take it in the
Business arising, okay. So as far as issues, amendments are of the minutes, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Business arising. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. If I could just raise the question on item 10, which was the City of Brantford Airport Board Report. Do we have an update? I kind of left the meeting last time thinking that the city was going to write to us and say, can you give us $241,800? Have we had a formal request for that? And is there any updates that we can have in respect of our dealings with the airport board?
Okay. Who could speak to that?
I guess through you, Mr. Chair, I guess I can speak to it. I was at the meeting yesterday. The request for the money never came up at the meeting. It was a full meeting. Everyone was there. And they brought this, there was a motion, notice of motion that is on your desk. I put one on everyone's desk this morning. So Allison and I went to the meeting. And then, behold, they moved the notice of motion to an active motion of the day, and then they voted on it, and the vote was, I think, 10-1, me being the one, and there was no sort of discussion before we had that vote to get it on the floor. And the resolution is in front of you. Shocking things in it. The language is sort of shocking. I didn't really know what to do or what to say because you know, when parts of the resolution are just not true, it sort of throws you off the entire process of going through it and making comments to it. You can read it and you can take from it what you want. And then as soon as they were done with it, they adjourned the meeting. And Allison and I left. It was kind of very unnerving and very surprising. As I said, I believed it was a notice of motion until I got there. And through the magic of knowing things, they changed it around and talked about it. And they said that we've never offered them any money and or any support or help them forgive their taxes or give them their developmental charges back for the new hangars they're building. They say we've never stepped up to the plate to offer them any kind of compensation for their airport. And in fact, they brought a reference to the last time they talked to a councillor about it. It was with Joan Gatward. So that tells you how long they had to go back to find something to talk about. And that's really it. They just said that we were uncooperative. And I can honestly tell you, Mr. Chair, and to this committee, that since I stepped off the airport board 2 years ago, I've heard nothing about the airport. Nothing's come forward to me. Now, there was almost something that came forward the other day as a motion, but it didn't get directed to budget as it wanted to, but it did get received. Councillor Oakley did receive it as information, and we voted on it unanimously to receive it as information. I'm not sure why they've decided to jump the queue and not put a committee together. I don't know that we've ever said we didn't want to help with the airport. I'm not sure they've ever asked us for anything outright about the airport. And they've come forward with this very aggressive and I think ridiculous way of going about it. There's a better way, a more civil way, a more friendly way, and a more neighborly way to handle the airport than to surprise the mayor and the CEO in front of a full board that didn't look up and look at me once during the entire meeting because they knew what they were up to. So I'm kind of not happy with what they did, but I mean, they did it, so we have to follow through with it, and then we're gonna have to do what we have to do to decide how we wanna be part of the airport. That's all I can say.
Councillor Bell?
Yeah, thank you, through the chair, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that update. Having just read this stuff from yesterday's meeting, the resolution at the end leaves the ball in the court of the board to talk to the city council. I'm guessing that we don't need to take any action at this moment until we know what they're proposing to do. But I think it is well worth thinking about options that we might take when indeed they do take this action, assuming they do take this action. One question I would ask of staff is, do we have a sense of the value of the airport? I know we take property tax revenue from it, but it is a very large piece of land and it must have value. Do we understand what that value is? And perhaps there's a second part of that question. Have we ever been approached by the city to ask, that they would ask, were we interested in selling it to them?
Allison?
Through you, Mr. Chair. That would be a complicated analysis, but we can certainly, start doing that. They did introduce a broader plan of a number of buildings that they want to put up. And then we'd have to take into consideration Oak Hill as well and how that fits into it. We also have water infrastructure, so it's a complicated assessment. There would be a lot that has to go into it. But certainly we could start, putting some rough numbers together. In terms of being approached, not in my term as CAO, can I say, but I have actually approached both the former CAO and current CAO to ask if they were interested in talking about the airport. It's always been a point of contention, and we never got anywhere with that, so.
Very much.
Okay. Any other business arising from the last minutes? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to number 7, consent items. Consent items to be approved. 7.1.1, can I get a mover to get it on the floor? Councillor Howes, Councillor McAlpine. Questions on 7.1.1? Councillor Bell?
Question to staff. We are still taking August as a recess, so we're still out of step with the city. Has any thought been given to aligning with the city, or the city aligning with us?
Allison?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell. We haven't had any formal discussions. August, because we typically participate in AMO, has been a good month for us to take off and certainly assist with the process with clerks. We haven't had any discussions with the city with aligning. However, I think we may want to discuss both the recess period and aligning our social services and paramedics budget with the broader budget process. It was a little late this year to get started, and then with next year being an election year, that complicates things a little bit. But certainly we can start that discussion. I don't know if there's a preference of council that you would like to take.
No, I appreciate that, because we do, social services, I've been on that now all the time in my time on council. and we end up with a real hiatus of almost 3 months. Likewise with the Grand Erie Public Health Board.
Any other questions on that one? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.1.2, the CIP for 91 Grand River Street North. Can I get a mover? Councillor Oakley, Councillor Kyle, questions on that one? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Consent items to be received. I believe we have 3 of them. Anybody want any of them pulled? Councillor Miller.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. 7.2.2, please. Brant Transit.
Councillor Kyle.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. 7.2.1.
Okay, so we're gonna go through them one by one then. So 7.2.1, update on emergency management program. Councillor Kyle, you'll move it to get it on the floor. Seconder, Mayor Bailey. Go ahead, Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, it's just a question, and it kind of comes from having to do some IMS training myself for work, 100 and 200. And I'm just wondering when you're planning out the scenarios and working through what that could look like, whether there is the agricultural component taken into account. So should there be a fire or a flood or whatever, how would we mitigate that from a livestock perspective, I think is just, it was top of mind, and I just wondered if that was something that's taken into consideration when they're planning. And
Okay, so I was gonna do 2 things. Either, I know Ken's coming up to give us a little bit of information later. We can either answer it then or have him up now, whichever you prefer.
if he has a quick answer now, it might be good for the public to hear as well.
Kent? Just for those that may not know, if you could just give us your name, please.
Coordinator for the County of Brant, and through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. Yes, we do take our agricultural community into, I guess, concern, but also into the planning in regards to our training, our emergency plan, and just preparing for emergencies, as we do have a large agricultural component in our community. So yes, that is done.
Okay, perfect. Any other questions on 721? Councillor McAlpine.
So I'm just curious, when we had the train derailment last year, there up on Dundas Street, did you learn anything from that shaped future planning and emergency training?
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair, absolutely. We learn from every single incident that we have, every training incident that we have and exercise. There's certain things that we've incorporated. We've met as a group and reviewed our actions and determined what we could do better in the future and what went well as well, and see if we can enhance our program. So we always take these opportunities to try and improve our response for the community and for the municipality.
Any other questions on 721? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you, Kent. 722, so Councillor Miller, you'll move it to get it on the floor. Seconder? Oh. But 722 is, oh, he's got no one. Councillor Miller, just confirmation, is this on Brant Transit?
Yes.
Okay, so that's actually been moved to a staff report in the addendum. So if I could just get you to hold your question until that staff report comes up. Okay? Okay. So 722 on the addendum is Grand River Conservation Authority. Can I get a mover to get that on the floor, please? Councillor Coleman? Councillor Chambers? Question? Councillor Chambers?
Is this 723?
This is 722, Grand River Conservation Authority.
Yes. I just wanted to make comment. The GRCA is proposing a 3.5% increase, which is quite reasonable. I notice that when it translates out into the apportionment, you can see that Brant County is increasing their assessment faster than most municipalities, and that relates to a 5.3% increase to Brant County. I can tell you that Long Point Conservation Authority did have their budget session this week, and similarly, the apportionment for Brant County is increasing more rapid than the other municipalities in the authority. But I can say that the authority is actually decreasing their operating budget by $500, so it's a 0% increase. Actually, it's increasing it by $500, but it's offset by lessening $500 in the capital program, so it's a 0% increase. But Brant County being increasing their assessment more rapidly than the other municipalities, it'll be about a 2.5% increase to Brant County. But I think the conservation authorities have shown great restraint and can manage their budgets quite well. And it's disheartening to see that the provincial government treats conservation authorities like they are out of control and not valuable, but they do good work for what they raise from the municipalities. So I just wanted to make those comments.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Miller?
Yeah, just a word on the budget, and if they come and present, they come and present. But the budget itself is a stand-pat budget. There's nothing new, there's nothing exciting coming, no big spending initiative. So it's very stand-pat. Keep the lights on, pay the employees, and run the programs that they're supposed to run. So, but as Councillor Chambers pointed out, it's a 3.5% budget, but good news, bad news is we get hit with a little more because we're growing a little quicker than the others.
Councillor Cobb?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. And I'm not sure if anyone can answer this question today, but I'm just curious, when I was reading through the budget package, how it might be impacted by the announcement from the province in terms of amalgamating the authorities into like the 7 regional, and what that does for the budgets that we receive from both GRCA and Long Point.
Allison?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So staff did send a Friday file with a sort of analysis of what we know right now. It won't, or it shouldn't affect the 2026 budgets because we're not expecting implementation really until 2027, but there's a lot of information that still needs to sort of shake out of that for us to get a fulsome analysis of how it may affect us. But we'll keep council updated as soon as we receive further information and get that to you as soon as possible.
Councillor Miller?
It's a good question because it could have affected it. It didn't. The budget was actually done up before the provincial announcement, or the direction was. So there is no increase. But the Friday file that Haley wrote was like just top notch. It was really good on this, and I told her that. I said, you did a great job. At the local level, and I said this to Haley, maybe I did. I said an ad hoc committee. There's things we have to try and protect when this all goes through. And I'm thinking, like locally, we have the Brant Park pool, which is, one of the largest outdoor pools in Ontario. It's well used. We have Apps Mill. We have the Brant Tree Nursery. So this GRCA, or the provincial move is really going to have a big impact locally. So we are trying to get out in front of it. Where it shakes out, we'll find out in a year.
Councillor Chambers?
A little bit at the authority meeting this past week, and the budget reflects pretty much stand pat. We're not going to be spending a lot of money doing a lot of things if we're going to be amalgamating and joining together. The interesting thing that was brought up by some of the other members of the authority in speaking with some of their MPPs, it seems that the health units, for example, are now being collapsed into bigger and larger units for governance. Now the Conservation Authority is the same thing. The proposal for 7 districts collapsing 37 or whatever, how many they are, conservation authorities, into 7 with administrative units from Dundalk to Windsor is kind of interesting. But they were saying that perhaps the next step will be the collapsing of municipalities into a larger, more different kind of arrangement for administrative municipal stuff. So stay tuned to that.
More to come on that, yeah, okay. Any other questions on the authority? Okay, seeing none for 722, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 7.2.3 is the fire service activity report. Get a mover. Councillor Oakley. Councillor Kyle. Questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Oh, Councillor Miller?
Sorry, Mr. Chair. When I got here this morning, this is the agenda in front of me, and I wasn't able to pull up the addendum. So my question to you, because I didn't learn that the Brant Transit update wouldn't be coming, it's a staff report. Is that staff report coming after the proposed fees and charges?
8.8, I believe it is, Councillor Miller.
Because based on the discussion around that, I would have, suggesting, there's an amendment I'm thinking of for 8.1. So I know we approved the agenda, but I'm going to ask if we could maybe move that up first and then look at the proposed fees and charges. It's a big ask, but it's not the normal way I get my agenda.
So what you're looking for is to move Brant Transit, which is 8.8, prior to 8.1.
Yes, because depending on how that discussion goes, I may have an amendment to make under the proposed fees and charges.
Okay, so we'll move that in, seconder to move 8.8, Councillor Bell. Any questions on that? Okay, so just to confirm, we're gonna move 8.8 to be the first staff report, and then we'll run through from there. Everybody's good? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you for that. Yeah, it's a little different today too without being able to pull up our agendas online either. I guess the world is coming to an end because the internet's down, so.
And the Maple Leafs won't make the playoffs. And
No, this
it's
is our
over.
year, because it's getting a little cold, you can't use your furnace. Anyway, so we're gonna go 8.8, which is the Brant Transit update. Everybody's got the addendum to that, correct? Welcome, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, good morning. Thank you, good morning. Through the chair, my name is Rodel Ramos. I'm the Director of Community Outreach in the Strategic Initiatives Department. This is a joint presentation supporting RPT 0382-25, an update on Brant Transit. Transit is a big topic intersecting many other county programs and plans, not to mention the mobility and connections necessary for residents, visitors, businesses, and services to thrive. I'm here with representatives from Via Transportation, which delivers our microtransit service on behalf of the county, and Danny Tota, the county's public transportation supervisor. Via is completing year 1 of a 3-year contract to deliver our microtransit service, so they will provide an update. I will conclude the presentation by providing a picture of transit funding and the biggest factors we are tracking as county staff that are likely to influence recommendations for future evolution of transit in Brant. You'll hear today that the service is largely optimized for current demand and it largely fits us given our current population and needs. However, what we see today is not an unchanging situation, and this begs certain questions, such as how and when should our transit service grow and evolve, and in response to what pressures. So our goal today is to create a shared understanding of the issues and forces we think we should be considering before we look to evolve Brant Transit in ways that continue to serve our changing needs. So over to Via for an update on Brant Transit operations.
Thanks, Rodell.
Thank you, everyone. How do we advance slides? Just press it?
Yeah, try.
Yeah, thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to speak with you. The themes of this presentation are both to cover I guess, an update in terms of how the service is running, but also talk about the evolution of transit in Brant County. Transit, to me, is freedom. Transit provides opportunities for people to get to work. It opens up the door to be able to go to healthcare appointments and school and all kinds of ways to participate in the community. I'm Rob. I'm the country manager for VIA. I live in Burlington. I've spent my entire career in public transportation, technology, and operations, and it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today.
And I'm Jessica Tufnell. I serve as the general manager for Brant Transit. I live just down the road in Haldimand County, and I've been working with VIA for 3 years, and really excited about all of the changes and optimization we've made on the service since we launched in January of '24.
Just in case you all don't know who VIA is, we are a global transportation provider. We build great public transit services. We try to make them as sustainable as possible in order to meet the needs within each community that we serve. And we're able to stand on the shoulders of our customers from around the world. If you look around on some of these logos, we work with Hamilton to help them redesign their bus network. We work with Google just up the road in Waterloo to provide employee transportation. And we do all kinds of work like this that's very specific and very tailored to each community that we serve. And by being a global company, we're able to stand on the shoulders of our customers by learning what works in different communities. What works with Transport for London in the UK might be applicable in Brant County, and vice versa. So we're able to actually take advantage of the fact that everyone that we serve is trying to achieve a very similar goal of providing public mobility. We do operate directly about 100 services where we provide fully trained drivers, we provide vehicles, we provide facilities, and we provide technology to be able to power these services. So I'm not sure how many of you all have been able to take advantage of the Brant Transit service, but it is technology enabled. We look at ourselves as a tech-enabled ops company where we provide technology that allows riders a very seamless way to access public transit, whether that's through a mobile app or a web portal or a call center, where they're able to book their rides and take advantage of the transit service to get around Brant County. Now, zeroing in specifically on Brant County, I'm going to pass it off to Jess, but Brant County, if you look at all of the metrics, I would say is among the most successful microtransit services in the country. I get the opportunity to work with a lot of, well, all of the VIA customers across the country, but I get to dip my toes into the waters of microtransit around the country, and what we're seeing here is actually quite successful. And I'll pass it off to Jess to go through some of the highlights of the metrics.
Thank you. To share some highlights about what the service looks like right now, we average about 4 vehicles on the road during our service hours, but that might flex up or down depending on the time of day and the demand patterns that we observe. Overall, the service right now for the current ridership is a reliable and accessible service. We have about a 93% met demand rate, so about 93% of the time when you request a ride, we're able to provide one. And half of the fleet is wheelchair accessible, and so our riders can indicate if they need an accessible vehicle to make their trip with drivers who are trained in wheelchair securement. Right now, we serve about 300 unique monthly riders. The riders themselves tend to rate highly of the service with a 4.8 average ride rating out of 5, and we're providing about 2,300 rides per month. When we dig into where individuals are going, we've largely seen that there's 2 large case uses for the service that are really working together, with one broad service and service parameters. We see that there's folks that are accessing employment, and then folks that I will broadly say are accessing healthcare. And you can see in the top drop-off locations, a lot of employment, is within the hospitality sector, the Restacre Plazas, the Hartley Avenue Plaza, Adi Dassler Way, and that is a growing segment. We see a lot of folks going to the No Frills, both to shop or to get to work, to the Tim Hortons and Linden Park Mall. And broadly, a lot of those trips are for employment. About 57% of our riders report that they're using the service to get to work. And then the other large group that we see is for healthcare, accessing a lot of services or day programs. You'll see Crossing All Bridges and Artsy as some of our top locations, as well as the Park Lane Terrace and other seniors' homes are frequent destinations for us. And I've given you a lot of numbers, but I'd love to share the stories of two of our individual riders who are using the service for both of these use cases. M is somebody who uses the service largely for this healthcare bucket. M is somebody who almost every time he leaves his house, he is using Brant Transit to make that trip. He is a senior with various mobility impairments, and he does require an accessible vehicle. And because of Brant Transit, M is somebody who can access a lot of different programming and really be involved in his community, as Rob had said earlier. He attends Artsy programming weekly. He goes to a music program in Brantford. He goes to go shop and run errands at the Linden Park Mall. He loves, has really gotten to know all of our drivers. He appreciates, he noted this specifically, appreciates how expert they've been in navigating a lot of the construction that we've seen. And M has actually taken over 550 rides since Brant Transit has launched with VIA almost 2 years ago. R is somebody who is using the service for work. R has never had a driver's license, and for her whole life she has used public transit wherever she's lived. And now she lives in the county of Brant and travels to her work in Brantford. She gets along with the drivers. She also noted she knows everybody well at this point. But for her, one of her biggest challenges is to get to work without a driver's license, and the times that Brant Transit is not available to make her trip, it costs her $30 to take, another ride share or taxi to get to work. And unfortunately notes that this has happened a little bit more frequently as ridership and demand for the service has grown. But M has taken over 600 rides as well, and is somebody, again, who just relies on public transportation to be able to access work and other community pieces. So hopefully that shares, two real individuals who are using the service, but I think largely we find that Brant Transit is filling a critical gap for folks that really otherwise would have very few options to be able to move around. 44% of our survey respondents identified as having some sort of disability, which actually is quite a high percentage for the microtransit services that we operate globally. 68% do not have access to a personal vehicle, and so they're constantly trading, the option of, if I can't get a ride, maybe I don't leave the house, which is 24% of them, or I have to pay out of pocket for a very expensive alternative ride. But largely, Brant Transit is allowing these folks to be able to access their community. With a few quotes from riders directly: I would not be able to afford transportation going back and forth to my work without Brant Transit. I work in the next town over and do not drive. I'd have to quit my job if the service wasn't available. My husband is a quadriplegic, and it costs $120 every time we have to get into Brantford to go to the doctors, and this allows that individual to take more trips to access the doctor. And this last one, it gives my spouse more time of the day, which is a common theme we've seen for folks with disabilities, that they can give their spouse or caregiver some reprieve, and Brant Taxi can help get them to appointments or programming. Since we've launched in January of 24, we have made a number of changes to increase the capacity of the service and really be able to provide the most number of rides possible, ultimately is the main goal. And we're very excited to report that with the same number of vehicles and driver hours on the road, between Q1 of 24 and Q2 of 25, we had about a 32% increase in the amount of rides served. And that was largely due to a number of steps that we've taken along the way as we've learned more and being able to identify more patterns, such as implementing a late cancellation policy, introducing a wait list where individuals can be waitlisted. If we can't serve your ride now, maybe a cancellation will mean that we can serve your ride in the future. We've moved our depots. We've made a number of algorithm parameter changes to impact things like how we plan for drop-off time or how far we detour out of the way. And things like increasing the specialization of our call center to make sure that we are providing the highest quality of services possible. The trend that we have seen since Q1 of '24 is that we're nearing capacity. And we've seen that every month there's more and more requests coming in for the service. We had about 5,000 individual requests for rides over the last couple of months. In October of '25, we actually had 15% more ride requests than October of '24. And that has just led to a trend where unmet demand has been growing over the last several quarters.
Okay, thank you, Rob and Jess. The story of Brand Transit from January 2024 to now is one of growing stability, responsiveness, and an enhanced ability to monitor performance and make adjustments. It's also a story about one specific, and some have called it a bespoke form of transit. It's not buses, it's a handful of SUVs and minivans. It's on demand, but you have to book at least a day in advance. You might not get the ride that you request. You share rides about 70% of the time. It takes riders curb to curb, and since there are no buses or bus stops, you don't have to walk far currently in order to ride it. While it's curb to curb, it's not door to door. In other words, if you're someone who requires more support, at this time we don't provide customized support if you have, for example, mobility or other challenges. It's generally well received by customers, and it serves groups who have few, if any, other options. It powers mobility and connections to employment and healthcare, community services, education, leisure, and running errands. And month over month, it attracts new customers and increasing numbers of ride requests, as you've heard. And while VIA is working with us to constantly examine and ratchet up efficiencies to squeeze as many trips out of our handful of vehicles, not every ride request results in a completed ride, whether because of capacity constraints or a customer-driven reason. And this last point, rising rates of unmet demand, has us thinking, as Jess mentioned, that we're at or near capacity, and so it's timely to think about what's next, when, what forms of transit should comprise our service. I'd like to now give a brief update from the program level, including insights that are shaping our planning. Firstly, let's talk about how our transit service is funded. Brand Transit is supported by tax levy, and costs are offset by fare revenue and provincial gas tax funding. And our costs fall into two general areas: service provision, and this is what we pay VIA to operate the transit service on our behalf, as well as a smaller amount for overhead, which covers salary for one full-time staff resource who administers VIA's contracts, serves as a transit resource, facilitates customer service as required, and updates council monthly on transit operations. There's also a nominal amount for advertising to promote the service locally. In September 2024, council approved annual upset limits, that's what you see in the bottom right-hand corner, over the 3-year contract span to VIA, which increases annually by a small amount to account for inflation. A few other figures, and you have these largely in the report. In 2024, service provision and overhead was about $1.27 million. This was offset by over $101,000 in fare revenue and over $280,000 in provincial gas tax funding. And as noted in the report, the county's net contribution to the transit program was almost $881,000. In 2025, we're tracking the county's net contribution to transit to be a bit lower due to increased fare revenue as the program became more efficient throughout the year and accommodated more rides. It's challenging to compare Brand Transit apples to apples to other nearby transit services because the form of our transit is very specific to us. Since we outsource the service, our overhead is limited. We don't own our vehicles, we don't service or store them in depots, we don't run fixed routes with bus stops that require installation and maintenance. I'm going to forward on to taking a closer look at Brand Transit rides. All Brand Transit rides originate and or terminate in the county, and that's not to say that Brantford plays a significant role. In some form, from January 2024 to last month, Brantford figured into almost 85% of Brand Transit rides, whether as origin or destination, and this is not surprising, given that many of the services our residents require are located in the city. when you take a ride on Brant Transit, you can only ride in one of three directions, from an address in the county to another in the county, from the county to the city, or from Brantford to the county. And of these three ways, the highest proportion, more than 44% of rides originate in City of Brantford and travels to the county. Most of this activity connects Paris and Brantford. More than 67% of all rides that start in Paris end in Brantford. 76% of rides going the other way that start in Brantford end in Paris. And as noted in the report, VIA's own examination into a sample of rides to the 403 Rest Acres Business Park for employment show that over 90% of rides originate from City of Brantford addresses. And the assumption here is that many Brantford residents benefit from Brant Transit to connect to employment in the county. Reciprocally, this also is beneficial to our local employers to access the nearby labor supply. So the story of Brant Transit today is one that's linked significantly with the City of Brantford. With the availability of greater data from VIA, we have more information points that provide insights into our current transit offering and to inform its planning. And so what you're seeing here, and a shout out to our business solutions and GIS colleague who took 22 months of ride data and created this line density map. It's a visual representation of the most popular trips if each completed ride was its own individual route. In other words, the brighter or whiter the line, the more popular or more frequently traveled the route. And not surprisingly, the image underlines the frequency of that Paris-Brantford connection. This is particularly helpful if we achieve a threshold of transit demand and usage supported by funding that enables consideration of new transit options, such as fixed routes. And I understand that there used to be a fixed route between Paris and Brantford, and that fixed routes continue to be a recurring question. This type of visualization can help inform future planning and build a case for future service enhancements based on existing rider behavior. So we are stabilizing the service, we're making it more efficient, more people are requesting and taking rides, we're leveraging data more effectively. Where do we go from here? There are three broad areas into which we're focusing our efforts. Number one, understanding our riders more deeply. VIA continues to do a great job providing us with opportunities to leverage data and glean insights into our ridership. We believe there are more opportunities yet to uncover, and that these are important in centering riders and their needs and their behavior in our planning. VIA conducted an opt-in survey recently, and admittedly it was a small sample. To strengthen our planning, it would be helpful to tap into a bigger, more representative respondent base, segment our riders into groups such as seniors and youth, for example, and engage them directly, hear from them directly to understand their needs. For example, to what extent are our riders vulnerable in any way, whether due to age or ability, and to what extent can our one-size-fits-all transit service accommodate their needs more effectively? What other enhancements should we consider and for whom? The answers, I think, lie in better and deeper understanding of our riders and their needs. Number two, collaboration with other municipalities. As staff, we meet occasionally with counterparts in other nearby municipalities to identify collaboration opportunities. For example, we recently spoke to Region of Waterloo for an update on their township transit strategy, specifically regarding fixed route or on-demand service to Ayr, as this could provide potential connections to Grand River Transit. We've also been speaking to Norfolk County about its fixed route to City of Brantford that passes through the county of Brant. And we've also supported nearby municipalities in their efforts to attract more funding, such as Six Nations in Norfolk County on their respective proposals to senior levels of government. We also continue to participate on in-SCORE meetings when they're scheduled, and one obvious area of potential collaboration is with the City of Brantford, particularly in light of that volume of Paris-Brantford movement and what appears to be a strong emphasis on connecting to employment in the county. Number three, enhanced transit planning capacity. This is about building our ability to conduct more sophisticated multi-year transit planning. Working with VIA has provided access to more robust customer and ridership data, and you're starting to see the products of these insights in today's presentation. We've started to mine this data to glean insights that inform future planning, and you're starting to see this in the form of data visualization. It's also about interoperating with other plans, such as those for longer-term residential and employment growth, and anticipating transit availability when new developments and businesses and services are available. Part of this, we believe, is also about bringing in external expertise when required to support transit planning, because staff are not transit operators. We are administering third-party outsourcing, and to enable this, we've proposed including transit planning in the capital forecast so that there's occasional capacity, as do other county programs, to engage in multi-year planning. The goal is not about building a transit division. It's about developing and supporting our ability to administer the program as effectively as possible, grounded in evidence with the resources we currently have. So what do these look like in concrete terms? We want to establish a vision for transit service evolution, specifically milestones or thresholds of demand and usage that trigger a process to evolve our investment in transit. Obviously, as the county grows, transit needs to grow with it, and that could take a lot of different forms. Expansion of our on-demand and current fleet, or different vehicles with greater capacity, perhaps piloting some form of specialized transit, exploring fixed routes, or a mix of approaches. And obviously, we need to engage council far enough in advance with evidence and options for the right size and types of approaches, including funding options. 2, that we continue to collaborate with our municipal counterparts with particular emphasis on City of Brantford, as Brantford is involved in more than 85% of our rides. And obviously, it's to our mutual benefit to engage in more collaborative transit planning. Lastly, we also believe we need to pay special attention to specialized transit. Older adults are one particular segment that can benefit from additional support and time using our service. We're already working with VIA for greater visibility into rides for trusted caregivers. You saw that mentioned in the report under the caregiver portal. And as our population continues to age, and if they age in place, Brant Transit may be their only or best option to get around to services and be active and included in the community. So between the report and this presentation, we hope we've provided you a comprehensive sense of how Brant Transit is operating and some of the factors that influence how we're administering the program. At the heart of this question is what type of service we want and for whom. Being able to ground future service enhancements on evidence and forward planning, and ensuring that we can fund those changes. I'm sure that you have questions. This report and presentation was intended for information, but if you'll entertain a question of mine, what else should we be considering to inform transit planning? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Just before we get into questions, just one little point I'd like to make here on the very first page of the presentation by Rob and Jessica there. It's got trusted by 500 plus of the world's most innovative municipalities. Would have been nice to see County of Brant in there. All about knowing the audience, right? Anyway, questions? Councillor Howes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and comments and questions for staff and our visitors. First of all, that was an excellent presentation. That was full of great information and really clearly delivered. So my compliments. Also, my compliments to everyone who's involved in navigating the complex machine that is the supply and demand of public transit within our community. It's tricky. It's very, very tricky. And within this horseshoe, Councillor Pierce and I may be the only ones who ever rode the bus from Paris to Brantford back in the days long ago. And there will be people in our community who, especially people who are new to our community, who wonder why there are still a couple of bus shelters around town. And there are people who look at us and say, well, why don't we just have a bus that goes from Paris to Brantford? And when that comes up to me, I always try to explain to them, because we're not Paris. We're a county that needs to serve everybody in all corners of the county. And it is very, very tricky. And back to the bus shelters, and Councillor Pearson, I would remember that when there was a full-size bus running from Paris to Brantford 40 years ago, it was almost always empty. Like it was a bus that ran around with 2 or 3 people on it. And speaking of numbers, I wanna dive into the numbers a little bit on this, because providing this service to the community is really, really important. But it's also worth acknowledging that there's 300 people who really, really care about it, and 40,000 people who don't. And that's really hard. Like, that's a very hard thing to navigate, especially when essentially $880,000 of the cost of providing this service is coming from taxpayers. So I'm wondering if my question I'm working up to is you said that 75% of the movement of transit connects with Brantford, either Brantford folks coming here or folks from here going to Brantford. That's important for us to recognize. You know, the other thing you said was that, you know, you said there's 300 unique riders. You said there's 44% of the riders are people from Brantford coming to the county of Brant mostly for employment or medical or whatever, some leisure. But does it mean that out of the 300 unique riders that use the service, 132 of them, 44%, are residents of the city of Brantford, give or take?
So through the chair, the report talks about a total of 962 unique riders for the year 2024. As of this morning, as I checked some of our stats, we have about 916 unique riders for the year 2025 thus far, and we think we're going to top out above 1,000 unique rides, comprising over 27,500 completed rides. When we gave the stat in the report, around 44% of rides originating from the city going to the county, that's being tabulated by way of ride origin versus ride destination, as opposed to who are the actual riders. But if you sort of cut the math, you know, obviously the number of unique riders are using this service many times over. I think that it is pushing us to start thinking about, you know, an analysis in terms of unmet demand, whose needs are not being served because there is limited capacity. I think that it also gives us stats and data in order to engage City of Brantford in conversations of potential collaboration. But you're absolutely correct, Councillor, that there is a finite number of users, and they are using the service many times over in a particular calendar year. That number just happens to be a couple multiples higher.
Okay, thank you. A quick follow-up. And my apologies if I had the one number wrong, and I'm glad to hear it was wrong. So 1,000 unique riders per year, more or less, is better than 300. Okay, yeah, thank you. If there's more discussion later about, you know, what should we be considering in the future, I may jump back in. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Oakley, then Councillor Kyle.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Rodell. So in terms of ways that we can further improve the sort of the efficiency of the service that we're using and meet more of that demand, what sort of things are we considering in that regards, specifically with partnering it with other municipalities, given that it's transit service designed to connect people to places within the county? Obviously, that makes sense curb to curb. We don't have other transportation options to connect people to, but within other municipalities, are we looking to potentially go to more of a model where rather than curb to curb, we're curb to public transit stop as a way to sort of maximize the efficiency of our service?
Through the chair. Yes, we're considering all sorts of options at this particular point in time. What I understand we did not have, and what we are starting to develop now, is a better understanding of the ridership data that allows us to do some forward planning. I'm aware of, previously transportation master plans and updates to the transportation master plan that anticipated a lot of various outcomes. But what I don't think that we had was an underpinning of evidence and data that that legitimized those courses of action, or it prevented, county staff from having deeper conversations with nearby municipalities. So conversations are happening at a couple of different levels. As you can imagine, I think that the conversation that we could be and should be having with the city of Brantford is going to be rather unique compared to conversations we may be having with Norfolk County, with Region of Waterloo. The latter, I think, are conversations around connecting transit systems and the readiness of other transit systems to be able to connect to us. In terms of the idea that you've just suggested, the opportunity to take our current on-demand to potentially get a rider closer and connect into a nearby municipality's transit service sounds like a good idea. But again, you know what, we're just at the beginning of accumulating. We're at 22 months of data. And obviously, we'd love to be able to look at our municipal counterparts in other jurisdictions and look at their data. Would love very much to quantify demand to see, what opportunities are there for more inter-jurisdictional transit.
Okay, and just one more follow-up, if I may. And in sort of the conversations about fixed route transit, Councillor House mentioned, the bus from 40 some odd years ago that was typically empty. But going forward, if we were to consider something like fixed route transit, we wouldn't be locked into, say, a full-size bus. We could have a vehicle that was more suited to the need. The reason I ask for that is, I think, there's lots of data and studies to show that providing fixed route service will induce more demand and more people moving to that type of service versus something like a microtransit service, which won't induce as much demand due to lack of visibility in the same way that a fixed route does. So I'm just curious as to your thoughts on that in sort of the vehicle size, whether or not that's a barrier to fixed route, or whether or not we can consider other alternatives if we go that route eventually.
Thank you. Through the chair, we're considering all sorts of options, but I think that, our priority is understanding our current ridership and their needs. We would love to be able to engage riders directly. And I know that a lot of the conversations around transit are about imagining aspirationally, ways in which we can create greater connections, and it has strong visuals attached, right? I'm kind of agnostic in terms of, I'd love to see what does the demand and the projections say about what potential ridership volumes may look like, and then see whether there are solutions, whether it's, different capacity vehicles, or, maybe service enhancements, availability of service on specific routes that best serve, and at what thresholds of demand and usage behoove us to be able to, to put these options in front of council far enough in advance so that we're responding in real time as best as possible to, to growth.
Thank you very much.
Just one thing before Councillor Kyle there. It's been mentioned a few times here, and the data and the data and the data. That's huge. Everybody knows I'm a data guy myself. And I'd like to say it's night and day with the data we're getting now to the previous supplier, but there is no night and day because there was no data. So I think what we're seeing out of this on a monthly basis and the reports that you're sending out on a monthly basis, that's huge. Because as Councillor House says, fortunately or unfortunately, whatever, it doesn't matter how you look at it, there's a lot of people that aren't in favor of this. But when they continue to see the data and they continue to see, the key is the unique riders, right? And that's the unique riders and the total number of rides per month. That information getting out there to the public is crucial, and I thank you for that, and continue that coming, because that is going to as you say, it helps us move forward and it helps us understand the direction of what we need moving forward. So I just want to say thank you on that. Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you to Rodell and to our visitors. So kind of picking up on a thread from Councillor Oakley's original question with respect to the other municipalities. So obviously the data shows that it's very concentrated on that county to Brantford link, but it's also important to note that currently the only agreement we have is with the city of Brantford. So of course, that's going to be where most of your data comes from. So when I look at the map, with that heat map that you guys had put together, obviously there's virtually no color outside of, a couple roads north of Paris, east, west, south. So I'm just wondering, as far as data as well, how are you determining? So if right now, you can assume that folks in my ward, probably anyone north of Paris, some will go into Paris and Brantford, but a lot are probably going North Dumfries, Cambridge, just thinking of our own family as far as dentist, doctor, that kind of thing. So how are you tracking the demand, the potential demand for people who, right now, I would never put the app on my phone and try to book a ride because I know that it doesn't go the direction I need to go. So I'm just wondering if you have a sense of, or how you're tracking that potential demand to determine whether or not we need to figure out something to get people to Conestoga College in Kitchener or to the bus terminal in Cambridge or what have you.
Through the chair, you're absolutely right. Our data journey continues. As I intimated, I would love to take a deeper analysis of unmet demand. I would like to find out to what extent is this happening in different parts of the county and answer the question, are various areas around the county being underserved by a transit service that is largely centered around Paris, Brantford, Brantford, Paris. Through some of the work that we are undertaking with our GIS colleagues in Business Solutions, we're starting to, go deeper into that heat map to find out, and we hope to, get to a ward-by-ward picture of ride requests, completed rides, who's leaving, who's arriving, and does that help to tell the story of, where needs are headed? And as I've also intimated, I'd also love to speak directly to riders, whether they are using this service or for some reason they are not, because I think that too should play some role in future planning. So it's a lot of those things. Apologies that it's not a very specific type of response, but giving you a sense that, these are the things that we have in our lens as we take this planning forward.
Okay. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Rodell. Thank you for the report. I love that analysis, the heat map that you've shown to everybody. Just following up on a couple of comments from colleagues. If we have about 1,000 unique riders, we're more or less subsidising them by about $1,000 a year. Is that a fair assessment?
Through the chair, yes, if you're cutting that number by, the tax levy contribution, it's somewhere, in the neighborhood of around $900 per individual.
And of that 1,000 unique riders, there's a proportion of them that are actually living outside of the county.
Correct. Through the chair, correct.
So there is a challenge for us as council to recognise the fairness of this system. And if I was one of the rural councillors, I'd be looking at this map and thinking, this is not quite serving what my residents want. So we have to be cognizant of that. At the same time, there is clearly a need, and you've pointed to where that need comes from, whether it's for employment or for healthcare. So I think we as council need to step back and think, how much more do we want to put into this? And is there a way of increasing the fairness of the system? Maybe it is, given that data you've got there might be a targeted levy on people that live in Paris, for example, where the majority of rides either originate or terminate. How we deal with the city on that one, I'm not quite sure. Just leave that as a thought. But just going back to comment of Councillor Howes that 40 years ago we did have a bus service I'm not sure how many people lived in Paris 40 years ago. 6,000. So we've trebled the number of people that live here. We've grown in the other locations as well. So you don't need a large bus. You can have a smaller bus, as Councillor Oakley suggests. What's going to be the trigger, Rodell, to make us move to a fixed route service between what your data points to it, obviously, between Paris and Brantford?
Through the chair, I believe that that's part of the work moving forward, is to establish what are those triggers. I believe it's probably a mix of, thresholds of demand, an analysis of, growth and timing of that particular growth. Costs underpin all of these various things. I think that looking at comparable municipalities and seeing, any sort of shifts that they may have taken in their transit journeys, from on-demand to more fixed routes. In preliminary conversations with VIA, they've noted that in order to, to reach the floor of demand that would warrant a conversation around fixed routes would require, many more users in the same vehicle, to warrant a conversation about either bigger vehicles or different types of vehicles. And so, I think that to more succinctly answer your your question, defining what those thresholds are, and aligning that to anticipated timing of growth. That way we have the underpinning of a plan that is based on and interoperates with other plans for either for residential or employment growth.
Thank you. I really would like to see that come back sooner rather than later, that analysis and the trigger points. I have one final comment, if I may, Mr. Chair, that's okay.
Yep.
Employment is accounting for 57% of the ride demand. Have we talked to employers about them making a contribution, or could we consider increasing the industrial tax levy to show a proportion of what they pay that will go towards transport for their employees?
Through the chair, our conversations, or at least my conversations with employers, are not necessarily around cost sharing or underwriting the cost of transit. It's primarily around any opportunities for coordination. So take 403 Rest Acres, for example, that the employers there tend to have shift times that aren't aligned with each other. And as a result, there are folks who are riding Brant Transit to go to work there, but some are getting rides and some have to, either go much earlier or make alternate arrangements because of the timing and, with our capacity challenges, is not providing sort of the day-over-day dependability that folks need, especially if they're riding for employment. We have been talking to a few employers in this respect to find out, are there opportunities, for example, to harmonize shift times? That way we can make the rides more efficient. But no conversations with them with respect to funding or sharing the cost.
My own personal preference, I'd like to enter that conversation, especially as we're developing on the south side of the 403 now in a big way. And when the Amazon plant or warehouse comes along, there's a perfect example that we might want to get in contact with them. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go Allison, then Councillor Miller, then Councillor Oakley.
Thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Just to add to that, and the reason I'm adding this is this predated Rodell's time taking over this portfolio, but we did run an industrial pilot program with transit previously, and we did have a particular employer who was contributing basically to cover the costs and a little bit extra to go from sort of one final stop in Brantford to their place of employment. We're always open to considering those. I think it comes down to whether we have a high enough concentration with one employer or another, or in a particular employment area. But again, we have started that pilot and can sort of, resume that at any time if we see sufficient demand.
Councillor Miller.
I would just say resume it now with Amazon coming, because I think there'll be that core demand. I got one frustrating comment on your presentation, Director Ramos, and then I got two questions. Near-term opportunities, you identified, determine how to better support opportunities for specialized transit. Very frustrated to see that, and I'll tell you why. For the longest time, we used to allocate $160,000 a year to specialized transit, and what we would do is we would actually pay the two, it was at the time two taxi cab companies in the county to run that program, and it worked very well. It was $160,000. Brant Transit, the budget has cannibalized that 160. It got incorporated a few years ago, and now we're looking for, well, how do we better support specialized transit? It was supported, just, that's why I'm really frustrated, because I've seen that happen. The question is, and maybe our VIA guest could answer this, and I did ask Adam yesterday, and it's a tough comparison, but I wanted to know, because when I look at this, the budget, approximately, just bear with me, 9.2% of the costs are covered by fares. So if we'll round it, we'll say about 91% of each fare is subsidized by the ratepayer, whether that's through the tax, the gas tax, or whether it's through property taxes. How does that compare, because you guys probably know more about it than anybody else in the room, how does that compare to, say, other transit systems like this one, the on-demand? Do you have any data on that? If I go to another place, I know Innisfil has on-demand. It just seems like a lot.
Yeah, through the chair. So setting the fare is kind of a policy that is done at like a municipal level or a county level, depending on the goals of the program and the types of riders you're trying to actually get to take advantage of the service. So we see places have it as a free fare. We see other places that look at this as like a premium service where they charge a larger fare, like $5 or $10, depending on the environment. You guys are like right in the middle. Like I think it's a public transit fare that is affordable for the people that need it and are able to take advantage of the service. We can do some elasticity analysis for you just in terms of like what increasing or decreasing the fare would do from like a ridership point of view, if that would be helpful for you. Does that answer your question?
The discussion's going on today, but that's fine. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
It just, like I said, at the end of the day, subsidizing something at 91% seems like a high rate, especially when you're dipping into property taxes. So my question, and it's either to VIA or to Director Ramos, you had a whole list of actions taken to address unmet demand. Well, demand and supply is easy. You increase the price and your demand falls a little bit, or we can increase supply too by bringing on more drivers and cars. So my question is, why is it $5 a fare since 2019 and you're wanting to do that same fare for 2026? Why hasn't that changed? Everything else is literally doubled. Why are we staying at $5? And I'll give you a good example. It costs $72 to take a taxi from Paris to Burford, but $5 for this. So just why are we staying at that $5?
Through the chair, when we were given the annual opportunity to look at changing fares, we had not yet had the opportunity to engage council, and given the affordability challenges facing many in the community, we weren't in a position to recommend any changes to the fares. The $5 fare is a little bit more expensive than some of our neighboring municipalities. It's about $3 in Brantford. I believe it's about $4 for Grand River Transit, which goes down to $3, you know, if you're using a particular method of payment. So it's in and around that particular area. But I think that what we were looking to do, I think that what we want to do with respect to planning is rope in the conversation around fares into that, so that if we are looking to fund any sort of service enhancements, then we're looking at all ways in which we are generating revenue, whether it's through grants, what we get from the province by way of gas tax funding, and fares. But we were not in a position to for 2026 because we we've quite honestly have not engaged the public as well as to whether, there is, whether they can bear that, because we know from some of the survey data that many of them take transit because it's priced in a way that suits them. So I would love to be able to understand the push-pull of that before coming up with a recommendation to bring forward.
Okay, thank you. It's just, I was looking at the data, destinations, you had Taco Bell, Tim Hortons. I think it needs to be changed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair to staff, has staff done in this regard an assessment of the economic outlook and economic benefits that come out of our transit service? The reason I ask is, I've been on a few delegations with SCORE in the past, where we talked to the ministers about the amount of employment that's enabled by the SET, to the tune of, I think, $500 million worth of economic outlook and economic growth due to that transit service. Because I suspect, looking at it, whether we're subsidizing 91% or, frankly, in my opinion, transit in general should be free. So whether we're subsidizing even 100%, I suspect we're getting that money back in terms of, the industrial tax rate, in terms of the economic growth. So I'm just curious if we've done any actual study into that.
Through the chair, in a word, no. But I am quite interested in finding out, of those 1,000 unique users, what is the economic and social return of that investment that tax levy is making. I think that I would love to see whether we can find a way, to try to capture that part of the story as well, to the extent that might help, in any future decision-making.
Yeah, just the reason I mention that is something I think that frustrates me in terms of how governments typically discuss transit is we discuss it in terms of how we can make it pay for itself. Rarely does that conversation ever come up when we're talking about investing in road infrastructure. In the last provincial election, one of the major topics of conversation is spending $35 billion to take tolls off of the one toll highway in Ontario. So I think we recognize, societally, that investing in road infrastructure, even though it comes off the taxpayer, has a positive economic outlook in terms of and return on that investment. And I would argue that transit is much the same way. So I think we are, frankly, missing the point in trying to find a way to make it pay for itself, because it pays for itself time and time over in terms of the various social and economic benefits. Thank you.
Councillor Miller.
Mr. Chair, I'm a little confused by my colleague's comments. He says that it should be free. I'm not sure how, if anything's free, somebody at some point has to pay for it. So I don't understand that comment. I also don't understand the comment. Nobody here suggested that it pay for itself. Not one person. What I'm saying is a little bit more should be paid by the ratepayer, but nobody has even suggested that come close to paying for itself. So I don't like that comment.
Any other questions from committee? Okay, two quick ones I have for myself, if I could. When it spoke about meeting the residents, we're going to meet R, and it suggested that, she takes 600 rides since January of 2024, give or take every other day she's taken it, which is fantastic. I'm curious as to when it says when ride isn't available, $30 one way to get to work. This has been happening more frequently in recent months. I'm curious, when somebody who is a frequent user of the system, one would suggest that they're booking their rides so far in advance. I'm trying to understand how, if somebody comes up the first time and they're ordering it, hey, might not be available. When somebody's ordering it continuously, and I'm assuming in and around the same time, what changed in order for this particular rider not to be able to get their times? Do we know?
Absolutely. To the chair, I would like to answer that and actually maybe answer an earlier question from Councillor Bell. That is, our system right now, as it's programmed, is very fair, probably to a fault of efficiency. It is built on very much a first come, first served basis. So if somebody is taking a very long trip that is out of the county, that will, if that request came in first, that will block that vehicle and not allow other trips. So oftentimes when we have unmet demand, it's not because we physically don't have any more seats available. It's because other passengers have booked trips that are in other directions ahead of time. And so even, as an example of yesterday evening, we had a number of wait-listed trips where we had to decline. I took a look, in the evening, we had seats available, but, one individual was going to the far west side of the county, and that didn't allow maybe 2 or 3 other people to do some of those other trips that are shorter and closer to. And that's something that we could potentially change in the future, but currently the system is designed to make transit as equitable as possible to anyone in the county of Brant.
Okay, I appreciate that. Now, if I could just kind of segue that into the actions taken, which was referred to earlier, it's got increased spare vehicle ratio. So spare vehicle ratio, you said you average around 4 vehicles on the road at a time. Is that spare vehicle ratio, so if one of them breaks down, you have one? Or is that spare vehicle ratio that, for example, first thing in the morning when people are going to work, in the evening time when people are coming back work, you add a vehicle?
It's actually both. Early on, when we launched the service, we had a maximum of 4 vehicles operating at a time. And as we analyzed the supply-demand data, we saw actually Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday at about 3 o'clock is our peak. And so we have flexed that up now to operate 5 vehicles at those times. So we have increased the total vehicles at max operating time, but we have also increased the spare ratio so that we have a vehicle available should one break down. Because there has been a couple of times where a vehicle breaks down, and that means that there's trips that we cannot serve.
Right, okay, and one final one, if I could. When it talks about, maybe this is to Rodell, when we talk about the contract for the 25, 26, 27, those prices, is there a set number of vehicles, like, for example, is, like, for 2026, the 1.1, is that with 4 vehicles? Or is that with 5 vehicles?
It's based on the total vehicle hours. And it is my job to then allocate those hours in the best way possible and the best schedule to maximize service.
Okay, so with that one there, what's the maximum number of vehicle hours we can attain from that?
It ends up being just over 1,100 vehicle hours per month. Or 288 approximately hours per week as I build the schedule.
200 hours a week, okay. Okay, I appreciate that, because that kind of gives me the flexibility of the number of vehicles as well. Okay, thank you. And no other questions from committee? Councilor Miller, did you want to do something with this report or not until the next report?
Not till the next report, thank you.
Okay, so, thank you very much, folks, for this, and how does committee want to go? Councilor Bell? Okay, Councilor Kyle will second that. Any other questions on that? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to go from 8.8, do some quick math. We're going to go to 8.1. RPT 0402-25, the 2026 proposed fees and charges. Somebody put it on the floor? Councilor Oakley, Councilor Coleman. Questions? Councilor Miller?
No questions, Mr. Chair, but I would like to make an amendment at the appropriate time.
Okay, any other questions on this report? Councilor Miller, now's your time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I get a seconder, I'll explain, so I won't do my usual preamble. But I'm going to move that the Brant Transit fares be increased from $5 to $10 for all regular, we'll call them regular users, and from $3 to $5 for seniors, and for those with any disabilities or whatnot, that remain at $5. And if I get a second, I'll gladly speak to it.
Councilor Bell, you'll second that? Okay, Councilor Miller?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's so many reasons why I really pushed for Brant Transit in the first place. One was for those seniors who've lost their license, living in Burford, living in St. George, living in Glen Morris, wherever, who didn't have a license and they had to rely on friends or the taxi company. but the fares have been in place since 2019. Everything has doubled since then. We know that. Going into 2016, I think going from $5 to $10 is not a hardship. We talk about affordability. Well, affordability cuts both ways. Obviously, we need it to be affordable for the users, but we don't want to bankrupt, homeowners. And we know property taxes are a regressive tax. So I think it's a very fair increase. At the same time, we do have a lot of users with disabilities who go to ARC, who go to crossing all bridges and so forth. And we know a lot of seniors are on fixed income, so that's why I strongly am suggesting that we keep those fares at keep them at $5. For seniors, go from $3 to $5. So just $5 for everybody, and then for everyone else, $10. So those two fares. And then the disabilities portion, I would leave that to staff for Sheena and Bryce to define who would qualify for that. So that's the motion.
Councillor Howes, Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I respect what Councillor Miller is trying to do. However, I can't support the motion as it currently stands because you're talking about a 100% price increase for some people. And while we discussed earlier how this is very important to 1,000 people in a year, and there's 40,000 people that don't care about it, for the 1,000 who rely on it, I think 100% price increase would be difficult. And I also believe that it's unfair to compare the pricing to a taxi ride, as earlier was presented, because this was never supposed to be competition for a taxi service. It's more like a bus service that just happens to have vehicles that are sized proportionately for the demand. And I would be more interested in seeing us take a thoughtful approach to a graduated price increase over the next 5 years. But I don't believe that's something to be solved today. I think that's something where we rely on our talented staff to put together some recommendations for us. So I won't be able to support Councillor Miller's efforts on this.
Councillor Oakley?
Through the chair, in response to the amendment, I respect where Councillor Miller's coming from. Property taxation is a regressive tax. That refers to the fact that property taxation does not take into account your income. A progressive taxation system would have people who make less money, pay less money, people who make more money, pay more money. The people who use our transit service, almost definitionally, and by our data, are people who are most vulnerable residents, or lowest income residents. So doubling the fare in this regard is a direct increase to the cost of our most vulnerable residents. So in fact, I would argue that this would be, by increasing the fares here, an even more regressive form of taxation on the people who are using the service, who need the service, than what we're currently suggesting by having it on the property tax rate. So I will not be supporting the amendment.
Anybody else? Councillor Bell?
Yeah, I'm not sure as seconder of the motion whether I can make an amendment, so somebody will have to correct me on that one. Am I allowed to make a suggestion? Yes, thank you, Councillor Chambers, who knows the rules better than anybody. I think that, I've got sympathy with what we got on the table here. And Councillor Miller is correct in pointing out that things have not changed since we started this system. So maybe, and playing towards where Councillor Howes would go, is maybe we just play catch up and then we do index the change in price to whatever else happens in our suite of fees and services. So, we could catch up to where we are from 2019 It wouldn't double the price, but it would show that there is a price to pay for the service we provide. And a lot of the people that are using this service are using it for employment. So, you know, as in the last 5 years, my guess is their salary has increased proportionately in those 5 years. So I would suggest, I don't know what the number would be, maybe it's 20% increase, which would make it $6 instead of $5, but I would suggest if somebody would second that motion, or second my amendment to the amendment, that would be a fairer way going forward, and it would respect the issues that Councillor Oakley has put on the table as well. Do I have a seconder?
Why don't we,
So there's a,
we could make that a friendly amendment to the
Oh, thank you.
okay, so we're gonna back up here. So I just want to be clear what Councillor Bell's saying here. You're suggesting a 20%?
I'm suggesting we catch up, so staff can do the work that's needed to say what would the price increase have been, you know, for all of our services over the last 5 years, apply it to that $5, and then index it going forward with the rest of our fees and services.
Okay, I'll save my comment. Councillor Miller?
yeah, and that can be, we can get a dollar demand, I think, maybe at council on that as well. I'm fine with that. I do want to point out, if, the report, the presentation, the word capacity, unmet demand, that come up again and again. If you have something that is so cheap and so affordable that people are taking advantage of it, and like I say, I seen Taco Bell, I seen Tim Horton. If people need it to get to work, it should be there. If we starve it of funds, and that's what we're doing, we're starving it of funds, we don't have a very good transit system. Let's give it enough funds from users, or at least start in that process to help it be more robust. And when it's talked about, you know, we're hurting the most, you know, the most vulnerable in our society. No, we're not. And that's why I suggested that we keep it at the same level for those with disabilities and increase it by a little bit for seniors. So that would take care of that. But yeah, I'm afraid that people that do want to use it won't be able to use it to get to work, to get to their health appointments. And other people will be getting to use it for, you know, I won't say frivolous things, but things that maybe we hadn't intended it for. So, thank you.
Councillor Chambers?
Just, I'm a little bit unclear on what the amendment is now. It was an amendment and then it was friendly amended, so I'm asking the clerk to read the amendment before the vote is taken.
Through the chair, to my understanding, the amendment is to look at increasing the fare to a proportionate wage. That would be a number gauged by staff. That would be deemed proportionate increase from 2019. So I would have that staff be directed to investigate a fare increase to match not inflation, but approximate 20%, as Councillor Bell said, and that the Brant Transit fare be increased by that amount.
So let me just jump in here for a second. My understanding is the only one we're looking at this friendly amendment to the amendment is for regular riders. For seniors, it's gonna, the amendment is to go from $3 to $5. For special needs, it's something that staff is gonna look at, but it's gonna be the lowest. Where we're looking to change, Councillor Miller wanted to take the regular rides from $5 to $10. It was suggested that we look back over since 2019, when the service started, as to how the other services have increased over the years, whether it be 2%, 3%, whatever it is, up to the 5 years, to give us a number of increase to kind of level set us with the other services that have gone up over the last 5 years. That's my understanding of what we were talking about. Now, my only caveat to that is, we gotta be careful. I don't believe it is, but what if we get ourselves into a situation where, when we figure all that out over the last 5 years, that it goes above that $10 mark? Is there gonna be a cap, or like that's my understanding, you know, that's kind of my only caveat of that. But I think I've got the understanding of where we were going on that. So really, it's only the regular riders that we're going to look over the last 5 years of how other services in the county have increased, and we're going to increase regular ridership by that percentage. One second. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's very good, Mr. Chair. I'm glad we elected you chair. What I will say is, that number, I think, would still need final approval, because I have a feeling you're right. I think that number might be well past $10, but I think we have that, I think it comes back to us for a final vote.
Right. Okay. So Councillor Kyle, Councillor House.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. Point
To
of
the amendment of the friendly, right?
Yes, so to that. So just one little point of clarification. So when we talk about the Tim Hortons and the Taco Bell, it's also important to keep in context, I think, that majority of those people are going to work in those places or into the other hospitality type businesses in that area. So those do typically tend to be our lower paid jobs in the county. So that's, that's, I think, important context. But I think my question here too is to the friendly amendment, to the amendment, or whatever we want to call it, are we creating a third category? Because currently, as it's laid out in this report, there's a general fare and a seniors fare. There isn't a specific fare for folks with disabilities or different abilities that may require special services. The only thing is that if they have a support person, that person is currently free. So I guess I'm seeking clarity. Are we creating a third category here?
Councillor Miller?
Possibly, but the fare itself would be the same for seniors as it would be for a person with a disability. And that definition, as I said earlier, I would leave that to staff to determine who would fit that category. And like I say, Sheena and Bryce and those guys are much better at it than I am.
You good with that? Okay. Councillor House?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was, Councillor Kyle captured one of my comments that I was going to make regarding the destinations of the riders. We don't know if they're just going to that plaza and they're getting dropped off at Taco Bell or Tim Hortons. We don't know if they work there. I'm not sure the characterization is fair, that it's might be frivolous trips or luxury trips. That's really not our business, I don't think. I'm still confused though about the amendment to the friendly and whatever. Like, I'm not opposed to us nudging the price up for regular riders and having that's something that we do every year. But it's what we've talked about in the last 5 minutes is, to me, a little bit complicated because we've talked about increasing it by $1, but then we've talked about increasing it by some composite figure that is representative of other services within the county, which I don't know how that math works. I don't know if they're comparable. So I would be much more comfortable supporting a motion to have staff look at this and come back with options or recommendations to us that don't have parameters wrapped around them from the front end.
Allison?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Just to speak anecdotally before I kind of go into a suggestion, is part of the reason why we've kept the fares the way they are is to not create another variable when we're trying to get baseline of data. That being said, I'm not necessarily opposed to it, but I might suggest, because there are nuances around this, and there's been some various suggestions about user groups, that staff come back with a report of that comparison and some suggestions of how we've potentially increased other rates, and present that for council consideration.
Okay. So just, Mayor Bailey, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the last 5-10 minutes of conversations made me very uncomfortable. I hope we're not putting it into 3 categories, because it's not the business of this horseshoe to declare disabilities, verbal, visible, or otherwise, and it's certainly not up to us to decide where the people are being dropped off. Councillor Miller, you've said Taco Bell 3 times, you've said Tim Hortons 4 times, and it's none of our business what people do when we provide a service where they go. They might be meeting up with their family, they might be meeting up with, have a coffee and then pick up a ride to school. You don't know. You're just offended by what you see on the thing, and I think it's very, very nasty of us for you to have said those things and
Okay, so hold
separated
it,
them.
I'm gonna interrupt right there. So we're not gonna go down this trail. I don't wanna put words in Councilor Miller's mouth here, but I think what he was suggesting is the fact of the examples that were given on the papers that we were given. There was Tim Hortons a few times on there and Taco Bell, so I don't know that.
And he didn't think those were as important as a doctor or a dentist, I think, is what he's saying. He thinks we've put this into place for a certain use, for people to use to go to their doctors, or something more important than going to Tim Hortons or Taco Bell to meet up with family, or whatever they're
their
going to
job.
do from there, or a job. So I think we need to stay with the 2 classifications. It's not up to us to classify or pigeonhole disabilities.
That I can appreciate. Councilor Miller.
The Tim Hortons, I mean, I've heard, okay, from someone in the know that there was a lot of high school students going during the breaks to those places. That's what I heard. As far as the classification goes, I think we do need to create it. And if somebody's going to work, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. You know, they're going to work to earn money. But there's a lot of people in our county that go to Crossing All Bridges, that go to ARC, that really don't have the financial means to support a huge increase. And that's why I was proposing that, because as was pointed out, they are the most vulnerable in our society. So I think, I mean, we had 2 classes. We had seniors, right? We had seniors, and then we had regular users. But I think we could I think we could still have 2 classes. People with disabilities and seniors and regular users.
Okay, so what I've heard here from the CAO is that the suggestion might be to allow staff to go back, visit this report, and come back potentially by council? Would that be doable? With a little bit more information of options as to how we can go forward on this. So, Councilor Chambers?
So if that's what we want to do, and I think that's what we should do, we should defeat the amendment, ask for a staff report on Brant Transit fees, and then we can separate that from the other report, and we can pass the other part of the report, the other fees.
Councilor Miller?
With the approval of the seconder, we'll draw that amendment, and then I don't know when we would pass. Would that be an amendment?
And I'll move, if you withdraw that amendment, then I would move that staff be requested to provide a report on the fees regarding Brant Transit for further discussion.
And I'd like to second it, and I think they've got enough discussion to go off of.
Okay, so everybody's clear what we're doing here, right? What we're doing, we're going back to, we're taking the report back to staff to give potential options of fare increases and the categories, I guess.
How many categories?
Right now, there's 2.
And no fare increase as of today, just staff report to bring it forward to find out when we should be raising the prices and by how much.
That's my understanding, yes. So, sorry, Heather, go ahead.
Sorry. We do still need to include the fees today as well, and including the Brant Transit as in there, so that they're all effective January 1st, and then we can come back and make changes at any time to the Brant Transit fees once we have the more information.
Okay, so that throws a little wrinkle in here then. So we've got to approve the fees that are there and then send it back for a report,
Yep.
which could adjust those fees going forward. Okay? So that's part of the motion, is to receive the fees as is, send the report back to staff for options coming back of potential or potential increase in rates for Brant Transit. Everybody's good? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Okay. Moving on, 8.2, RPT 0351-25, municipal insurance review. Mover, please. Counselor Coleman, Counselor Bell, questions on that report? Counselor Miller?
A question on the cyber insurance. We do it with somebody else. Who do we do the cyber insurance with?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and to the council members and Mr. Mayor. For everyone's knowledge, as a new face, my name is Christine Murphy. I'm the Assistant County Solicitor. So right now, I believe that we are with Reliance for cyber insurance. It's an entity that exists outside of Intact, who is our current provider for municipal insurance. Oh, sorry about that. I can repeat that. So right now we are with Reliance. That is the provider of our cyber insurance. Our municipal insurance is provided through Intact.
Did you have a figure for the cyber insurance?
I do not have that presently with me. I don't know if through, Miss Welchman, if that's something that she has with her.
Through the chair, sorry, is it for the coverage provisions or for the amount that was?
Yeah, how much
paid
is
for
the premium that we paid to Reliant for cyber insurance?
I believe, it is Resilience is the
Resilient?
company, and I believe it was about $75,000 for the 2025-2026 period.
Okay, and and we don't know yet if that would be a little less or a little more if we could get it through IPE, correct?
Through the chair, no, we don't know that yet. We are entering the phase in which we will be speaking with the representatives of Resilience to determine what the cost would be to bring the cyber policy in line with the general policy that the county has with IPE, because the dates do not overlap. And at the same time, we will consider whether it would be better to simply wait or to determine if that cost to bump us up to have those two policies run concurrent with each other will be more fiscally responsible and more prudent.
Okay, thank you. And it was just nice to see it wasn't a double-digit increase again, so thank you.
Any other questions on that report? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
8.3, RPT 0414-25, timelines for presentation of long-term financial plan. Can I get a mover? Councillor Chambers, Mayor Bailey, questions? Councillor Oakley.
Through the chair, no questions, just a comment that I want to thank both staff and the mayor for developing this process for us with the changes in legislation and essentially still enabling us to have the same level of impact on the budget as before the changes to the legislation. So I just want to thank both staff and the mayor for that.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.4, RPT 0400-25, pre-budget approval to tender for various capital projects. Can I get a mover? Councillor McAlpine, second. Mayor Bailey, questions? Councillor Miller.
Probably don't have to ask this, but I want to ask, are all these projects, are they in the long-term financial plan?
Heather?
Yes, these are all in our capital forecast or operation forecast and have been accounted for in the long-term plan.
Okay. Any other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.5, RPT 0335-25, pre-budget approval of purchase of vehicles outfitted for winter operation and future winter fleet replenishment. Mover, Councillor Chambers, Councillor Coleman, questions? Greg's right there if we need him. Nothing? All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.6, RPT 0397-25, review of appointments to boards committee. Can I get a mover? Counselor Oakley, Counselor Bell. Questions? Counselor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a comment. The Brant Condominium Corporation no longer exists, so I do not need to be reappointed to it.
Any other questions? We gotta do that now? Okay, just a note, as the clerk just mentioned, as of this point in time, there's nobody appointed to the Biggers Lane. I think we talked about that before, and I don't think we need that at this point in time, so just to note that, but going forward, we'll fill when need be, put it like that, okay? All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. 8.7, RPT 0395-25, options to fill counselor seat vacancy. Can I get a mover? Counselor Coleman, Mayor Bailey. Questions? That was a tie. We're going to go Counselor Oakley.
Through you, Mr. Chair, are we looking for just questions or making suggestions based on the
Let's
report?
go questions first,
Okay,
and then we'll.
I will wait then.
Okay. Counselor House.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a little bit of a comment, but it leads to a question for staff. Looking through this and looking at the different options, and I know my preference, we'll get to that later, everybody will talk about their preferences, but one of the factors that comes into consideration is the financial aspect. And, you know, we're seeing in here that if we're to go with a, if we're to go with the one option, it could be $20,000 or $25,000. And at first glance, it might give us pause to say, well, we don't want the taxpayers to incur an extra cost to fill this vacancy, and therefore kind of not consider that option. However, I'd like confirmation from staff. I'd like to make the argument that a council seat being vacant for a number of months results in a cost savings to the taxpayer. The taxpayer is not paying that councilor's salary, their benefits, any expenses related to. So I'm wondering if if those costs, saved costs, kind of mitigate the possible costs of doing a by-election, and therefore I'm hoping that it would help reassure some people that there isn't actually a very big financial hit to having a by-election.
Somebody want to comment to that? Heather, thank you.
Yes, having a vacancy will have a small impact on savings in terms of several months' worth of counselor salary. It wouldn't offset entirely the cost of a by-election, but it does have a small savings, yes.
Okay. Counselor Coleman, Counselor Miller, and then Counselor Bell.
For recommendation?
Just questions right now.
Okay, I'll wait for them.
Anybody with questions on the report? Counselor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. In respect of option one, could staff remind me how far Ella Haley was behind the second place candidate in terms of number of votes?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell, I believe the report states that Ella Haley had 665 votes, and the runner-up, Mike, oh, I'm going to butcher this last name, but he was at 500 votes.
Oh, sorry, that's not quite what I meant, Sananya. Ella finished third. How far was she behind the second placed? I think it's Councillor Coleman. Was it 5 votes or 100 and?
Let me just pull up the webpage.
Okay, just while we're waiting for that, any other questions? Councilor McAlpine?
So if we look at
Microphone.
the March 8th date, the election would occur if we went that route. Then we have a period of time, because we're off in August. So the effective time period that a councillor, if they were elected, would only be about 5 months. So I'm just saying that it might not be reasonable to go through all the process of election and all the costs for the candidates, everybody, so.
Councilor Miller?
Was that a question or a comment?
I think that was a comment.
Are we allowed comments?
We'll go ahead with the comment.
Okay, the only thing I would say, cost aside, and I'm not a big believer in spending extra for an election, but go back to planning last week, and it was very much a Ward 5 planning meeting. And you know, Brian goes to the Royal Winter Fair every year, and so we didn't have anybody from Ward 5, and we had the one application from Ward 5. We were doing the Canesville thing, and now that affects everybody, but still, I'm just pointing out that what I'm trying to say is the sooner we get it filled, the better for the residents, for the county.
Comment, Councilor Coleman.
Yeah, comment to that, Mr. Chair. I believe those sitting around this table represent all the county.
That's the way it's supposed to be. Sunayana?
Through the chair to Councillor Bell's question, so the difference between Ella Haley and Councillor Coleman was 164 votes.
Okay, Councilor Bell.
Another question. In option 3, where we talk about key considerations, it says councillors can give preference to eligible candidates, being committed to not running in the 2026 municipal and school board election. Is that a requirement, that they say, I will not run in the next election?
Through the chair to the councillor's question, no, it's not a requirement, but a lot of councils do that, make that a requirement during an appointment process, just so it doesn't appear as though they have an unfair advantage to run during the 2026 election.
Okay, thank you, that's clear.
Councilor Oakley?
Through the chair, a question. In terms of the by-election, we are, with our actual election coming up next year, we are trialing a new election process, which is the only online voting, and election day, there will be stations for people to come on and electronically vote. Would it be fair to say that having a by-election here actually would also serve as an opportunity here to say, you know, essentially work out the kinks with that process to make sure when we do our full-size election that everything's running smoothly, and a sort of smaller, more controlled opportunity to make sure that that process works appropriately?
Through the chair to the Councillor Oakley's question, yes, it allows us to test it out on a smaller scale. I'd also like to point out that the county has done an online election as part of a hybrid election in the past. So we have some experience with an online election, but this time it'll be with a new vendor because the previous vendor is no longer available.
Councilor House, and then we're going to move forward.
So we're in comments now?
Go ahead.
Okay, so just, everybody has their own feelings about this. My personal feeling is that the people sitting around these tables should not be selecting someone to fill that seat, especially someone who could be running in the next election. I just think that's not the right role for us. I'm supportive of the by-election. It's not ideal. It does carry some costs. It is slow, but personally, I think the by-election is the purest way to approach this.
Okay, Mayor Bailey, and then we're going to look for a motion here.
Yeah, since this has all come up, since the resignation, I've had 7 people approach me to appoint them or to bring it forward to my council to appoint them. All of them are suitable. They would be great councillors, but I mean, in an election when they win maybe, but not just to phone the mayor and ask to bring their name forward for an election or for an appointment. I don't think that's cool at all. And I also want to take us back to Brantford with the appointment that they made and how it was received. It was not received as transparent and or, you know, there was just a lot of criticism about the way it came about. and I don't want that around us. I think we've had enough troubles. I think we need it to be as transparent and as clean. We have new clerks too. I just, you know, they could use it as a dress rehearsal for the real election next year. I think so. I think that we could justify whatever we have to pay with the by-election as time for the clerks to get comfortable for a bigger election. And it's only a ward, not a whole county thing. So I've talked to Heather Boyd about how much it would cost. It's not an outrageous amount of money, and it's fair and it's transparent. So I would certainly support a by-election.
Are you going to put that forward as a motion, Mr. Mayor?
Would love to.
Second for that, Councillor Howes. So we have the option of a by-election put forward and seconded. Questions to that? Councillor Oakley.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, so I'm fully in support of this outcome. In my mind, I think a by-election is the only way that a role like this should be backfilled. No other government role, whether it's MP, MPP, or even now mayors with the strong mayor legislation, can be backfilled by appointment. I think fundamentally it does warp democracy to be able to do so, as much as it is an imperfect solution given the timelines associated. And I also think it's beholden on us, I think, after we're done with this process, where we should actually be formalizing a process on how we address resignations or absences in the future, because we shouldn't be making this decision in vitro when it happens, and with council having the knowledge of essentially the players in play before we're making a decision on which way to go. So I think going forward as well, we should develop an actual definitive policy on how we're going to handle by-elections or backfilling people by appointment, so it's not a per-case basis. Thank you.
Councillor Chambers, go ahead.
I was just going to make the comment that in my time on council, we have had situations, one situation where there was an election, another situation where there was an appointment, and another situation where the next in line was placed on council. And at the end of the day, from my point of view, there was no difference in whoever was ended up on council. So I don't think we can analyze it to death and having a policy, things could happen again. We've had councillors pass away on council. We've had resignations. We've had all kinds of things. We have people just out and out quit. So I don't think it's any less democratic. The Municipal Act allows us to do appointments. It allows us to do any of the options, and that's what democracy is. That's what the law is. So as far as having an election with a term that would essentially be 6 months, and a lot of that would be a lame duck term, I'm not really sure that an election, the additional staff time and the additional effort that would entail, it would be a good use of time. If we're not comfortable in making an appointment, then that's what we should do. But I don't mind making an appointment. I don't mind looking at applications. We've done it every which way that you can think of. So I think the least, in my opinion, favorable option would be the election because of the lame duck situation, the length of council term remaining, and it's not so much the cost, but the staff time is considerable. So I guess I don't support that resolution. And what you may have is a division where nobody will be able to support anything if you do it this way.
Okay. Final word, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, it's just my comment is I think option 2 and option 3 don't work for me. It's either option 1 or option 4. I think option 1, given the closeness of the race last time round and the fact that voters did make that choice some years ago to have Ella Haley if Brian was not or Christie was not in the place, I think I would prefer to see option 1. I think that's a fair outcome. It's a timely outcome. It's the quickest route to getting this council fully staffed up again. So I will not support the motion proposed by the mayor.
Okay. So we've got a motion put on the table and seconded that the option, I believe, is option 4 for a by-election. So all those in favor of the by-election? Opposed? That's defeated. Counselor Coleman.
Mr. Chair, I'll put option 2 on the table, seeking a seconder.
Option 2. I just want to confirm here. Was it open to? So just to confirm, option 2 is appointment by open call for applications. And is there a seconder for that? Counselor McAlpine. Anybody want to speak to that? Counselor Chambers?
I think that has merit because it enables people who are interested in putting the name forward. You can look at it that way. The idea about not having someone that is going to run in the next election on council through this appointment, a lot of municipalities they think that's very important, and I know I don't really think it's that important because the people eventually are going to choose anyway. So I can support option 2. What I'm worried about is that there's going to be another defeat and then another defeat and another defeat, and that's what I say we're going to end up with. Nobody wants to do anything, and we can't do that. So I'm hoping that at the end of the day, there will be a consensus to do something rather than just defeat each option.
Counselor Oakley?
Through the chair. In that sort of theme, if I may ask a question procedurally of if we end up defeating all options, is it then a reconsideration to bring something else back? Or we have to go to council then too?
Why don't we not think about that until
Okay,
such time as-
okay, all right.
I know Counselor Chambers has that thought in our minds now, but let's. Mayor Bailey.
Mr. Chair, I'm aware that council has approached people, members of council have approached people to be appointed. And with me knowing that, I have to vote against this because it's not fair. People have been solicited to apply.
Counselor Bell.
I can't support this option, and our staff do make the point that such a decision would not necessarily reflect any taxpayer or any ratepayer preference. I think the people spoke 3 years ago, they gave the next in line. I believe we should follow that route.
Anybody else to this motion? Counselor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. I would have to mirror Councilor Bell's comments here and also add, I do think adding the weight of incumbency to someone who has not gone through an election process, I think is a significant undertaking and something we should take very seriously. I'm not saying that people aren't taking it very seriously. I think we are. But for that reason, I can't support this option because I struggle with giving someone the bias of incumbency in the next election should they run without them first going past an election process.
Okay. Counselor Chambers.
I just want to make one point for and you may want to have some advice on this, but when you're looking at option 2 or option, whatever it is, about the next in line, you're dealing with identifiable individuals at that point, and you shouldn't be doing that. The discussion, when you're talking about identifiable individuals, the third place person is an identifiable individual, there may be discussion associated with that appointment that is not appropriate in open session. So you may want to have some advice on that procedurally.
Okay, if we go down that road, we'll get advice for sure. Any other comments to this motion? Counselor Chambers?
I just want to say one more thing about that. If option 2, or whatever the odd option is, comes forward, I would feel very uncomfortable voting on that option when the person has been identified. That isn't right.
I hear what you're saying, Counselor Chambers, but if I think back to when it was Counselor Bulma and we appointed previous counselor to that position, that name was in open session.
My recollection, and both the times when we appointed a third-place finisher, or in that case, it was a second-place finisher, and a former, it was an in-camera session.
Okay. All right. So, okay, so I'm going to look to staff here for some advice on Counselor Chambers' comments regarding identifiable individuals. Heather, please.
So having identified the name of the person or the information regarding who got what votes last election is public information. Where council may want to go in camera is if council wants to discuss personal matters about any of those individuals, like if we want to discuss that, but that would be when we would go in camera. That has nothing to do with choosing one of the other options. Like if we chose option 2 or option 3, either one of those could be done completely without any discussion. If we're gonna actually name a person tonight, then that's something that might warrant some in-camera discussion on personal information. We need to be very careful because none of the deliberations on who we appoint can be in camera. But if we want to talk specifically about personal information about them, then that discussion would be in camera.
Okay. So committee understands that? Okay, so right now where we stand is we've got option 2, which is appointment by open call for applications on the table and seconded. No further questions on that. All those in favor? Opposed? And that is defeated. So we've got option 1 and option 3. Councillor Bell,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll move option 1.
is there a seconder? Councillor Oakley? Discussion. Councillor Chambers?
I'm not going to support option 1, not because of any identifiable individual that's been listed in the agenda that everybody can see. And it should not be construed with what I'm going to say as anything to do with individuals. But when an election occurs over 3 years ago, the placement of the people that were up for election has 3 years plus gone by, and that's why I don't believe that it would be a relevant comparison to appoint the third place finisher so far away from the actual election. When we did that in the past, it was within the first 6 or 7 months, I believe, and due to a death on council, and that was relevant because the people remembered, essentially, it was close in their mind. But after 3 years plus, the third place finisher in my mind is irrelevant. That's why I don't support that option. It has nothing at all to do with any individual that placed third.
Councillor Kyle?
Thanks, Mr. Chair, through you. And I would have to agree with Councillor Chambers' comment. If this was in the first year of the term, then I'd be more inclined to see this as the most viable option. But given that we're 3 years in, And by the time the person comes on, that we're towards the end of the term, and I feel like there's a lot that has changed in the county and in the community, that they're, just because the votes were the votes back then is not necessarily reflective of what the community might suggest now. So, so yeah, I'm not in favor of that, just given the time.
Councillor Oakley?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so I would largely agree with Councillor Chamber and Councillor Kyle's comments. Again, to sort of harp down the same road as Councillor Chambers, my next comments are not related to anyone individually who's here, but, or who are the identifiable individuals. But I also think that there's an aspect here where we can't necessarily draw the conclusion that had the councillor who resigned not run, that those votes would then be proportionally, and the person who was in third place would then be in second place. I don't think that's a fair statement to say. That being said, with the options left in front of us, without having to reconsider things, out of the options 1 and 3 that are remaining, I am most supportive of the option 1, so I will ultimately vote in favor of it, given that it's the best out of the 2 options remaining to us.
Mayor Bailey?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to state that if this fails again, this fails on number 1, then we'll have to go in camera, because number 3 does only concern one person, and we would have to name them. So if this fails, then obviously there's only one name for number 3, and we haven't mentioned it yet today, so we would have to go in camera.
Okay, anything else to option 1? Seeing no further questions, all in favor of option 1? Opposed? Okay, that is defeated. So, we have option 3. Might I suggest we add that to our in-camera session? Councillor Miller?
I'll move option 3, and if it passes, yeah, then I think we go in camera.
Mayor Bailey?
I can just have the clerk tell me exactly what number 3 says.
Through the chair to your worship, option 3 is a direct appointment. From the staff report, it notes under this option, a member of council would put forward a recommendation to appoint an individual for council's consideration. The clerk would follow up to officially confirm interest and eligibility before a final resolution is approved by council. And then it just goes on to provide background that this option was utilized to fill a vacancy in the 2014-2018 term of council.
And who was replaced and by who in 14?
Will Baume by Steve Schmidt.
Right. So if we're suggesting that works, why wouldn't we just do that here?
Heather?
Sorry. One point in option 3, though, is that members of council may bring forward more than one member. So if there's more than one candidate that people have in mind, we will bring that back to a special council meeting, which would be the in-camera session to consider the merits of those appointments. So it doesn't limit us to just one candidate that we're identifying tonight. Members of council may bring names forward to the clerk, and we will have a special meeting to consider those options.
So we don't necessarily have to go in camera today, is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay, so right now, my understanding here is we've got option 3 that's on the table. There's no other options. So we're going to vote to either approve or deny option 3. If it's approved, then there will be a certain period of time, I'm assuming, to bring potential candidates forward to the clerk. And then there will be an in-camera session to discuss those. Choose one out of that in-camera session. They will be approached to understand if they want to fill that position, and then they'll come back and ratify at a council. Correct? Okay. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you just clarify when we might, as members of council, bring forward names?
I would suggest, I'll look for clarification, but I would suggest that if in fact this is passed today, it would have to be ratified after council, and then we would bring forth after that.
Correct. We'd probably give about a week, and then we'd get scheduling that special meeting.
And would we bring forward names? How would we do that? Would we write an email to Heather or to the mayor? Or do we bring it out in a council session?
We'd send something out to all councillors to let them know, but it would be going through the clerk with names so that they could start the confirmation of the eligibility and the interest before we actually brought any names forward for consideration.
So that would suggest that hypothetically, if we had 2 or 3 or 5 names on the list, they've all been notified to say, yes, I would stand, and all the background check, we'll call it, has all been completed.
So in simple terms, I could write an email to the clerk and that would be the process.
And they would engage that person, so obviously, name, contact information, that type of thing. Okay. So again, right now, we're just voting on option 3, and then we'll proceed forward after that. So, Councillor Kyle.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Just through this, speaking to option 3, we're running out of options here, obviously. So I think I would be most comfortable with this one if we were committed to kind of looking towards applicants who, or appointees who aren't wanting to run in the 2026. Because I do agree with Councillor Oakley's comments earlier that there is a lot of data to suggest that someone who is an incumbent does have an upper hand over others who are running. So I'm not super comfortable giving somebody that incumbency for the next election.
Valid point. Mayor Bailey.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the other thing that I would be worried about, or I want council's opinion on, would the people be from the ward they're going to represent, or are they going to be a councillor for the county of Brant? I think that's important. Well, I think it'll be very important if the wrong person gets in, and they're from Upper Rubber Boot, Saskatchewan, and not from Ward 5.
Well,
So,
I think my response to that is the fact that you don't necessarily, you have to be a County of the Brant resident. You don't necessarily have to be a resident of the ward that you're running in.
all right.
I would assume that that could be, part of the factor of discussion,
All right.
because it's a very valid point, but it's not mandatory that you, Councillor Bell, you would suggest.
I am the example of that.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was the example. I now live in my ward.
that's right. Okay, so we're clear, right? We are just voting on option 3, whether that's the direction we want to go, and there are no other options at this point in time, should this fail. So, all those in favor? Opposed? Okay, so option 3 has passed. So this will go forward to next week's council, and after next week's council, we would suggest there be a week or so to get names in, and then a special meeting will be held. Okay, that was 8.7. Moving on, 8.8 we already did, we moved that up. Section 9, committee reports, Brant Heritage. Get a mover, please. Councillor Howes, Councillor McAlpine, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Communications, number 10, 10.1, Firma Energy, Ingrex Renewable Energy. Mover on the floor, please. Mayor Bailey, Councillor Bell. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Other business, Councillor Oakley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So yesterday at our Accessibility Advisory Committee, we had a delegation from the library in regards to a client of the library that they had who used a mobility scooter to get to the library. And because of the distance traveled, they would then have to try to find a way to charge. And I think it was an interesting discussion and something I wanted to bring to council in regards to, we have electric car chargers out there. We're looking to encourage people to use other modes of transportation other than vehicles. but we don't have the infrastructure in place for people, say if they're using e-bikes, scooters, so on and so forth, to have a place to charge when they get to public facilities. So I was curious in regards to asking the question of either community services or operations and what resources we would have for people, their devices at our public locations, and if this is something, I'd be interested to look more into this, because it was something I never thought of, and might be some enabling infrastructure we could invest in at some point to encourage alternative modes of transportation.
So through the chair to Councillor Oakley, there is significant funding available for those initiatives, and they are placed, I believe, at the Brant Sports Complex here. And, you know, it is certainly something that we could consider in the future. Right now, at least from an operations perspective, we don't have many charging stations in our capital plan as it stands.
Okay, thank you. Would it be possible to get a Friday file just on what resources we do have currently available? Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Bailey.
Yeah, I was also at that meeting, and the other thing that we could do too is if we had a bicycle rack in some of these facilities, some of these batteries come off the unit and can be brought in to be charged off a regular plug, but they don't want to leave their bike or their whatever it is outside unattended without being able to chain it up. So it might be easier if we just let them come into whatever facility they're at and maybe had some sort of a pole or a small bicycle rack so that they could put their scooters or their bicycles and secure them and take their units in and charge them inside. Might be a cheaper fix for now.
Okay, thanks for bringing that forward. Nobody else with any other business? Seeing none, mover to go in camera, Mayor Bailey, Councillor Kyle, and we are going to go in camera to discuss S239, trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, financial, or labor relations information supplied in confidence to the municipality or local board, education or training session for emergency management. And all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We're going to go 2 minutes, please. Okay, we are back in open session. Thank you very much for those that returned. I see nothing else on the agenda, so I will look for a motion to adjourn. Counselor Kyle, thank you very much. We are adjourned.